Welcome to the Bentley Systems training course, where you will learn how to optimize post-tensioned concrete slabs in RAM concept. For this video, we will show you how you can use groups to control your PT optimization. Now, groups will allow for the selection of optimizable post-tensioning objects to control some of the object's properties. Whenever a group is assigned to either tendons in the model or a profile point, it'll force the optimizer to evaluate those different types of objects together to come up with a common solution. Now, please be aware that if you are using grouping, you may not always achieve your most optimum result, since now you are grouping certain objects together. For our sample model, we're going to take a look and see if grouping is appropriate. Now, if I were to take a look at the banded tendon lines in the latitude direction, I'm going to notice that my model is fairly symmetrical about grid line 4. Basically, everything above grid line 4 and below grid line 4 is matching roughly in geometry. And if I were to design this model, I might want to force the optimizer to come up with the same types of banded tendon polylines both above and below this particular grid line for ease of construction. So I'm going to use groups to instruct the program to do that for me. Now, your first step in creating groups is to go to the Criteria menu bar item and select your tendon parameters groups options. Now, you can create groups for banded tendon polylines, distributed tendon quadrilaterals, and also profile polyline groups. For my model, I'm going to create some banded tendon polyline groups so that the number of strands both above and below grid line 4 is matching and my model is symmetrical. So to create a banded tendon polyline group, you could just click on the Add button, create a name. I'm going to use this for grid line 2 and 6 interior bays. So go ahead and click OK. And then I control its parameters through this area. And I can create as many groups as I need. So let me go ahead and say I want grid line 2 and 6 exterior. And I also want to create some groups for grid lines 3 and 5 interior, and also their exterior bays. Now you can create as many groups as you need, and you can control the properties for each individual groups through this table here. And this is what the optimizer will use when groups are assigned to the model. Now, when we preliminarily set up our banded tendon polylines, we didn't assign groups to them. But this process could be done prior to creating any optimizable objects if you want to assign the groups right from the start. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my properties. The only thing I'm going to change is the minimum and maximum strands, as this doesn't quite match up with what I have with my slab thickness. Actually, all of them are going to get the same because they're all in the same thickness area. And of course, I'm making sure that the optimizable checkbox is selected. So once I'm satisfied with these groups, I'm going to exit out of the criteria, and then I'm going to return to my latitude tendon parameters standard plan. Now, with my selection icon active, I can go ahead and hold down my Shift key and select the banded tendons that I want to assign. I'm going to go ahead and start with the interior bays for along grid lines 2 and 6. I'm going to select them, right-click, and hit Selection Properties. And then I can assign any of those groups that I need. I'll go ahead and assign my first one. You're going to notice that some of the information now becomes grayed out because it's going to grab those parameters from the criteria. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. And then I'm going to continue this process for whichever groups I want to assign. Now, if I wanted to, I could take this a step further and assign groups to my profile polylines to ensure that the elevations are symmetrical about this center grid line for my particular model, since that's my choice to force that. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen along grid line F here. Now, if you remember, I went ahead and set up an optimization regions for my model. Region 1 is basically everything to the left-hand side of grid line F, and Region 2 is everything to the right-hand side of grid line F. So automatically during the optimizer, the program is going to break these banded tendon polylines, which I set up that as my region boundary on purpose because I realized that perhaps my exterior bays may want a different number of strands than my interior bays. Well, the optimizer is still going to be able to break the tendon polylines here, and when it does, it's going to basically identify this side of the break point, group these two tendons together, and this side, break that, and these two tendons together. So even though they were assigned the same group, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a constant number of strands across that break point. The program will still understand that those are part of different regions, and different regions are optimized separately.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.